The story of Ruth, a journey of love and loyalty. Long ago, in a land of rolling hills and golden fields of grain, lived a woman named Ruth. Her story, though simple at first glance, would echo through the centuries as a powerful testimony of faith, loyalty, and redemption. It all began in Bethlehem, a small town in the land of Judah. There was a great famine, and the people suffered from the lack of food. Elimelech, along with his wife Naomi, and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, decided to leave their homeland in search of a better life. They traveled to the country of Moab, a foreign land, where they hoped to find food and peace. For a time, life in Moab seemed to offer some stability. Elimelech and Naomi built a new life, and their sons married Moabite women. Mahlon married Ruth, and Chilion married Orpah. But fate, as it often does, took a tragic turn. First, Elimelech died, leaving Naomi a widow in a strange land. Then, after about 10 years, both her sons died as well, leaving Ruth and Orpah widowed, just like Naomi. Naomi's sorrow was deep. She had lost everything: her husband, her sons, her hope. Feeling alone and with no future in Moab, she decided to return to Bethlehem, having heard that the famine had ended and the Lord had blessed her homeland with food once again. Before leaving, Naomi called her 2 daughters-in-law and, with a heavy heart, urged them to stay in Moab. "My daughters," she said with tears in her eyes, "go back to your mother's homes. May the Lord be kind to you, as you have been kind to me and to my sons. May you each find rest in the home of another husband." Orpah, though sad, eventually agreed and returned to her people. But Ruth did something extraordinary. She refused to leave Naomi's side. Steady voice, she declared, "Do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried." Faced with such a powerful declaration of love and loyalty, Naomi realized that Ruth would not change her mind. So, together, the 2 women journeyed back to Bethlehem. Their arrival caused a stir in the town. The women of the village murmured, "Is this Naomi?" But she replied with sorrow, "Do not call me Naomi, which means pleasant. Call me Mara, which means bitter, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." Even in sorrow, hope began to bloom once more. It was the beginning of the barley harvest, and Ruth, determined to provide for herself and her mother-in-law, went to the fields to glean leftover grain, an act of compassion allowed by the law of Moses to help the poor and foreigners. By divine providence, she entered the field of a man named Boaz, who happened to be a relative of Elimelech, Naomi's late husband. Boaz was a just, respected, and kind man. When he saw Ruth working so diligently, he asked his servants about her. They told him she was the Moabite woman who had returned with Naomi. Boaz was moved by Ruth's loyalty and said to her, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord reward you richly. Stay here in my fields, and do not go elsewhere. I have instructed the men not to touch you. When you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn." Ruth, amazed by his kindness, bowed low and asked, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes, since I am a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "Because I see your heart. You came to take refuge under the wings of the God of Israel. May he reward you for your faith." Boaz's generosity continued. He ordered his workers to intentionally leave extra grain for Ruth to gather easily. That evening, Ruth returned home with an abundance of barley, and Naomi was astonished. Learned the field belonged to Boaz, she exclaimed, "That man is our close relative, one of our kinsman redeemers. In Israelite culture, a kinsman redeemer was a relative who could marry a widow to preserve the family line and restore the family inheritance. Naomi, sensing a divine opportunity, carefully instructed Ruth on how to proceed. During the harvest, Boaz would sleep near the grain to guard it. Advised Ruth to go to him at night and lie at his feet, a symbolic act of submission and a request for protection. Ruth followed Naomi's guidance, and in the quiet of the night, Boaz awoke to find her there. She said, "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." Boaz was deeply touched by her boldness and purity. He promised to take action, but first, he had to give another, closer relative the opportunity. The next day, Boaz went to the town gate, where legal matters were settled. He called the other relative and explained the situation. When the man learned that marrying Ruth was part of the arrangement, he declined, fearing it might jeopardize his own inheritance. So, before the elders and the people, Boaz declared, "You are witnesses today that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion. I have also taken Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, as my wife, to maintain the name of the dead with his property." The people responded with blessing. "May the Lord make this woman like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May your descendants be mighty in Bethlehem." So Boaz married Ruth, and the Lord blessed them with a son, whom they named Obed. The women of the town said to Naomi, "Praise the Lord, who has not left you without a redeemer today. May he become famous in Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him as her own. Obed grew up and became the father of Jesse, who became the father of David, the great king of Israel. And thus, the story of Ruth, the foreigner who chose loyalty and faith, became part of the royal lineage of David, and ultimately, of Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah. Loyalty in times of hardship. Ruth remained by Naomi's side when everything was lost. She chose the path of love and loyalty, even without knowing what the future held. True loyalty shines brightest in dark times. 2. Sacrificial love. Ruth gave up her homeland, her family, and her comfort to care for Naomi. Her selfless love reminds us of the love God desires us to show to one another. Love that gives without expecting anything in return is precious in God's eyes. 3. God works through the ordinary. Ruth's decision to glean in a particular field seemed simple. Yet through that choice, God led her to Boaz. Even in small decisions, God is quietly at work. 4. Hope after loss. Naomi believed her story had ended in bitterness. But God had not finished writing her story. Joy came again. There is always hope, even after heartbreak.